Welcome to Leaders on the Edge. Never let them see you sweat. I'm here with my hijacker, Amanda Mitchell, who is also a very good friend of mine and a business consultant. So, Amanda, I'm going to act as the guest today. So, what do you got in store?
Well, first off, I'm not a very good criminal because I'm full on with my real name on video. So this hijacking might be my last episode into the criminal world. So for those of you who are familiar with Deborah in terms of watching her on a regular basis on Leaders on the Edge, you know she is the elite performance expert and strategist. But what you may not know is that she leapfrogged from having a high school diploma all the way to becoming the CEO of a $20 million corporation. And she made it by going through all the steps all of us might have thought we could make it through, but never knew we could. So starting as a receptionist, she worked her way up, and that's how she got to where she is today. So there's an awful lot to know about Deborah, and tonight she's going to tell us everything, including perhaps, I don't know, passwords, mother's maiden name, anything that you can think of that would be helpful, Deborah. We are
Open the
happy to hear.
whatever it takes to get some viewers and listeners. So, and Amanda, I do want to let you know a little bit more about Amanda. So, Amanda Mitchell, as I mentioned, is a good friend, as well as she and I both work in the corporate world. So it seemed extremely appropriate that I have someone who knows and understands the world that I work in be the one who is hijacking the episode. She's the founder of Our Corporate Life. She creates custom solutions that quickly reduce the disruptive drama, not that anybody in corporate ever has drama, as well as the corporate insanity that keeps getting in the way when businesses are trying to implement their solutions. She's recognized because she can quickly and profoundly bring happiness and productivity back to employees. And it's a proven fact that doing that increases the bottom line. Working with the C-suite senior executives as well as their teams in communication, I am thrilled. Amanda, thank you so much for being here with me.
Well, it's my pleasure. And as you know, the more you learn about people, it's like an onion. So I'm excited to learn even more about you, even though I've known you for a little while. So to prep for this, I did go lurking and checking out some of the things I could find online about you. And one of the things that I thought was a very bold statement was on your website, which is DeborahDubree.com, for those of you who are unfamiliar. It says, you're revolutionizing the role of leaders to meet 21st century challenges. So why don't you start there and help us know what's coming and what do we need to be ready for?
Well, the reason revolutionizing is because I'm really strong believer, have been for, in fact, my very, very first book was based on really the idea that you can lead from any place in the company and should, that is, and act as entrepreneurs within a company. Now, this has been a lot of years ago, and now it's become the thing that people are talking about around the world, that the top-down hierarchical model of do as I say, haven't you looked at the title on my business card? I'm very important. And I'm the one who's supposed to know all the answers. So you do what I say. Those are long gone. Those days are long gone, and thankfully so. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't companies that are still running their leadership in that way, but it's a leadership style that's never going to work, certainly not with the world that we have now after the pandemic. It didn't really work before. It's even more required now that we revolutionize in the role of leaders to meet the needs of the people working for them and within the company.
So when you say that, do you mean that the decision making has moved from the top down to the front line? Is that where we're going with this revolutionizing?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. It should be moving down. There's two different things that can be happening and should be happening. One is those who are at the top hierarchical positions are still the ultimate decision makers. They typically know more. They understand the liability at a broader base, and those type of things. And they don't know everything. CEO hired their C-suite because the CEO felt that the C-suite that they were hiring were very intelligent, capable, knowledgeable people, but then they handcuffed them like a hijack. But then the same, but then the same thing happens when you go, from the C-suite to their top level managers and so on down. In today's world, instead of running a model of that hierarchical style, it really needs to be a coaching style of leadership. And most leaders have not been taught how to ask questions in a way that they can extract the juiciest, best, most inventive information from the experts around them, and partner with the people who are working with them and around them, whether that's across silos or that's those who are working on your team. But be able to ask the right questions. And then, as I've told some of my clients, make a sign, put it on your monitor that just says, shut up and listen. Or if you're going into a meeting, put it in your book someplace, but listen beyond the words. Listen beyond the rhetoric that's going to come out of people's mouths, because they're used to saying what they've been saying in the same way that they've said it. And they're watching the leader to see how the leader is expressing themselves, whether what they said is good or bad, in quotes. So there needs to be a deeper listening as well as a knowledge of how to ask questions and in what way.
So that's kind of the way that change was made in the old days, where it was, sort of pushed down. Now that you've got a different generation coming in that has an expectation that they're involved in every decision, it feels like that revolution you're talking about has pressure coming from both directions. How do you
That's
think that impacts the way leaders, in terms of their flexibility and in how they're managing? And also, I would imagine it's, you know, a little chaotic in terms of how they're trying to feel their way through being a leader in the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about there's a push both directions, because the people in the working community now are much bolder than they ever used to be. It used to be because, our parents and their parents above them were taught, you respect your elders. And typically those that were running the companies were the elders. Now, the person that is your boss could be somebody younger than you, or on your team. That, we look at diversity. I look at diversity in so many ways, whether it's culture or color or just where in the country or world that you were born. You're bringing in new and different information. And unless somebody knows, again, we go back to those questions, knows how to ask the right questions in the right way to gather that information, to know how to then uh, I'll use the word praise, because I believe in praise, but praise with authenticity. That, oh my God, what a great question, or what a great answer. But then you don't leave it there. It's like, it's interesting. So tell me more about that. So you keep digging and digging and digging instead of getting an answer. And too often we brush it off. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. But for now, we're going to go back and we're going to do it the way we've always done it, because that's what I said. And quite honestly, with this whole the great resignation that's going on, I think it's much more than a resignation. I really think it's the great realization. People are realizing, especially I'll go back to after the pandemic, that there are things in my life, that matters more than just going in and picking up the paycheck. Certainly important, but I want to pick and choose where I'm going to pick up that paycheck, because I'm looking for a place that supports me and I feel cared about and I feel part of a community, and we work together to still get things done quicker, better, faster, more efficiently, and more effectively than we did before, when I was under the stress and pressure of the culture of the company plus my job itself.
So you had mentioned, it's about listening, like you have your clients put a note saying, listen,
Oh, it says
or
shut up and listen.
I was going to say, or something
But
ruder. I was not
that was
going
note
to.
to self.
Yes, I was not going to say that. But so listening is a big part of it. But one of the things when you've got two different types of, or any kind of backgrounds coming together where, there isn't necessary commonality in terms of, history or, culture or whatever. What do you think the role of assumptions are and how you can keep those from getting in the way of you actually hearing? I mean, you're listening, but are you hearing, I guess is the question.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I work with my clients on because we all have bias. And the bias might be, I like chocolate ice cream and you like vanilla, but I must be right because I like chocolate ice cream. And you say, no, but
You
vanilla
are
is really
right.
good. But no, vanilla is just plain. Why would you like vanilla? So I'm coming at it from my perspective of my likes and dislikes or the things that I've heard over the years that I may not even be aware of, that are just in my, subconscious mind. So there is um, there is a way of teaching people to minimize and recognize their unconscious bias so that when it comes up and they realize they're starting to question something, question the person as opposed to the idea, and question it in a way that's saying you must be wrong because of the tone of voice that they're using, instead of questioning it out of curiosity. Again, going back to that, well, that's interesting. So tell me more. I've never heard or seen it done this way. Can you explain how that would work? And keep that curiosity going. And when that's done enough times, it starts to shift our bias off, or at least we become more consciously aware of it quicker. So we don't keep going down those same paths and stop the innovation that happens whenever we are in a questioning, inquisitive mode.
So before we move off revolutionizing these leaders, revolutionizing, can be scary in terms of just the thought because it definitely has change in it. But it also, most people have artificial limitations on what it is that they can achieve. And when you think about revolutionizing, that almost feels like throwing up everything. Well, that does not sound good, but tossing things in the air and seeing, what makes sense and what should stay and what should go. So how, as you're working with these leaders, do you sort of work through the natural sort of resistance to um, scary words that might imply change, as well as their own artificial limitations that we all put on ourselves, and high
Right.
achievers more so than most, I think.
Yes, you're right on that. We as high achievers, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and we are often perfectionists. And there are many times with a lot of those that I work with around the world, whether male, female, and around the world in various countries. A lot of times we wait to the last minute to get something done. It's something I've
I've never
noticed. I
seen that.
No, me neither. Me neither. I used to wait until I was a straight A student in high school, and that I would say college, but never went to college. But straight A student in grade school, high school, and all that. But part of the way I did it, what I would wait to the last minute. I would wake up wee dark 30 in the morning. I'd cram like crazy. I'd go in and ace the test, and then go about my business because I didn't need that information that much anymore. What stuck, and what didn't. So going back to your question, one of the things is to always I'll do what's called future focus, where we can look at, so what is future back? How can we look into the future and say, so why are we even talking about change? Why do we even want to make the change? Where does it matter? And how much change can we really put upon ourselves with dealing with the normal world that's going on right now, and the busyness that's coming with it? Um, where is it most important to make the change and in what way? And then from that future back picture of the why, and then saying, so what would it take? what are the changes that need to occur, and then reverse engineer from there, going back even further and saying, so what are the first steps? So it's a process of going through all of that. When we go all the way back, it always ends up in, oh, it's you, meaning meaning each one of us, because each one of us then has to make that decision. Yes, I will take on some new behaviors than what I've had before. I will use some different language than what I've used before. I'll be open to feedback and opinion more so than what I was before, in order to partner together so that we don't feel alone in all these decisions and changes, and one person isn't the one pulling the most amount of weight. And then when all of that is brought together as a true team, as opposed to a group of people, it makes a huge difference. Everybody's willing to work together then and applaud each other and figure out how to get through the mistakes and stuff that are made along the way. But it's incremental.
Well, and that brings me to, like, probably a lot of the people who know you know that you've had a lot of experience working with professional athletes, and certainly there's an awful lot of competitiveness, and I mean that's what it's all about. But I just read this article in the Washington Post about Tom Brady, and regardless of what you think of him, it and I think a lot about him, which I will not go into. In the article, what they talked about was the way that he became, that he really has average skills, if you want to think about it that way.
Yep.
But what
Yes.
he has a process and a habit, and he's always, working towards what it's going to be. So, like, for instance, he was at some event in Barkley. Charles Barkley saw him running sprints in the parking lot, and he said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm preparing to win the Super Bowl, in 7 months."
Yes.
So, he has a system, and he works the system, and he stays with the system. And so when you think about your, preparing these companies for the 21st century, like, how do you serve it up in a system? Or maybe you don't use a system necessarily in the way that you're not making them run sprints, but, like,
Oh, I
how do
haven't.
you
They're really
break it?
funny doing that in suits. So suits and loafers.
There you
or
go.
spiked heels. Yeah.
There you go. Well, those are sort of like cleats, only it's just one cleat. So, like, what are the steps, like, when you're getting people into that, like, getting ready to be, or on the process or path to being, the most competitive you can be in the 21st century?
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's a great question. And you're right. There's a lot of the athletes that are the ones that we hear about on TV for good reasons, and on radio in different places, are those that really were average. You take Michael Jordan. I mean, he was cut from teams and everything else, and it wasn't until he was up, the team, the Bulls were up against the Bad Boys of Detroit. And if you're not aware of all that, just look it up. But the Bad Boys of Detroit, that Jordan realized, I got to beef up. If I'm going to play this style of game and I'm going to have 3 guys hanging on me every time I go to the basket, I've got to get myself powered up and beefed up. And he was the one driving practices and working harder than anybody else, because he knew his skills alone were not enough. And the same thing when I work with business leaders and that, and I tell them, I said, just because you're smart and capable and knowledgeable and you've got your college degrees or multiple degrees or whatever, good for you. Good for you. That got you to where you are. It won't get you to that next level, because that next level is going to take a contextual change of how you think about yourself, how you think about your team, how you think about the world around you. So I have what I call the ABCs for creating a competitive edge. Now, keep in mind, when I talk about competition, I'm not talking about me to you. I'm talking about me to me. That in order to be part of a team that becomes even more competitive in the world around us, a business, one organization to another in the same field, it means that everybody has to play their position. Everybody pulls their weight, just like you would on a football team or any other team. So what we look at is a competitive edge is how can you get better? As you just mentioned, how can you get better at what you're doing so that you are playing much better within the team? So you're not a group of people, you are a team of people pulling together with a common goal, whether that's on a project or that's on as an organization as a whole. So when we look at the ABCs, the A is for accountability with autonomy. One of the things that's been proven right now is that freedom is a huge thing. That's why people, again, are leaving, this great resignation is because they're looking for more freedom. So, but it's free and it's freedom with, autonomy and accountability together because we still have to make sure people are doing what they need to be doing when they need to be doing it with the results that we're looking to achieve with the people around them that can support them. And then the B goes back to your key behavior indicators. So instead of KPIs, which are still necessary, the key performance indicators, KBIs are what drives key performance. So your behaviors are what drive performance. If you don't behave in the way that you need to behave, in the way to make sure that that performance occurs, then the performance is never going to happen or it'll get done. It just won't get done at the highest level. And then the C is around critical communication, but it's really communication that's filled with curiosity, going back to the asking questions and questioning everything, challenging, not challenging like finger in the chest. Well, tell me, what did you mean by that? It's challenging your own ideas as well as the ideas of others and the ideas of the companies. Is that really the best that we can do? Is there something we could do new and different? As we look at our competition or others around us, what are they doing new and different? And what might we do, if anything, to tweak our own services, our own products? And then the third part of the C, so it's curiosity, challenging, and then co-creating. So it's truly being a team that partners within the company. So C-suite, partnering with each other across silos, leaving the ego at the door and saying, all right, here's the end result we're looking to achieve. So I know you bring this expertise, I bring this expertise, this other person brings another expertise. Let's hash this on back and forth and see, can we get to the end result that we're looking to achieve? And if not, then we'll let it go. If we feel we can, then we need to push forward. Or unless you're coming up with a solution, finding the best solution for that particular project. So that's really the ABCs is the autonomy with accountability. The B is for your behaviors, your key behavior indicators. And then the C is the critical communication of curiosity, challenging, and co-creating.
You can pull your Michael Jordan analogy through that because when he played Detroit and he knew he had to get bigger, they were still losing. It wasn't until he understood he was part of a team and
Right.
he had those conversations with everybody. They knew their roles. They
Right.
took responsibility for what role they were in, and they all really took ownership, I think, of some of their behaviors. I'm not trying to paint them with a perfect brush because they were
No,
not
but
my team, but
well, they were mine. So, because I came
oh,
from
well,
Chicago.
well, then of course that's different.
and and I am the hijacked guest. So, the duct tape is off. Let's go, girl.
Well, there you go. But and I think the benefit of thinking about Jordan and the Bulls is there's enough distance that you can see how the pieces really did gel once things happen. I mean, I think we'll be able to see that with LeBron and all the other things that are happening now. But certainly when you think about work as a sports team, and
Mhm.
I've seen lots of research that talks about people who play team sports in particular are more successful at work because they understand more how to interact and understand roles and
Yes.
know when to pass the ball more or less.
Right.
So I
Well,
can
and it
see.
goes back to the comment I made earlier too about player position. There was nobody who rebounded like Rodman. His whole philosophy. Now, whether you like the guy, don't like the
Come
guy,
on.
doesn't matter. And
No,
you
no,
look
no,
at
no, 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 no.
but you look at the skill only because his thought process was, I'm going to go up at least one more time than what everybody else will go up.
Well, you've
So
forgotten Charles Barkley. He's the round mound of rebound. Come on. There were other rebounders. It
I
depends
didn't
on your
say that there
team.
weren't others. I didn't say that there were others. So he was one of the best. How about that? They were
Okay,
both some
and
of the best.
because I'm a Knicks fan, let's throw in Charles Oakley, who we love.
Oh, good.
Um,
Okay. Well, that's cool. And I'm good with
okay,
both of those guys too. But if we go back to the corporate world, it is when they play it like a team sport instead of like a group of people that all have a great deal of expertise, but aren't playing at their top level. Just like, one of the things I always work with is starting from the top down, C-suite and the um, CEO is they've got to understand they're the catalyst of the company. And no matter what, anybody, I don't care how great they are, could go in and teach the team, and the team can walk away from those trainings and go, "Oh my god, this is the best thing ever. Let's go do it." And as soon as the C-suite shows up and they're the catalyst and their behaviors haven't changed and their language haven't changed, everybody gets deflated and they go back, "Well, it's just, 9 to 5 it. I'll get my paycheck and go home, keep my mouth shut." And then they quit, which is the great resignation, because they're really looking for all of us as human beings to matter. We want to know that we're part of something that matters, and we individually want to matter. So when it's played as a team sport, me telling you that you're doing a great job doesn't take away from me doing a great job as well. And together, I know that we can do even better because we're bringing multiple talents and ideas and perspectives to the game.
so it's the sum is greater than the parts.
Correct. What you
So
said.
I think it should be some sort of a fortune cookie.
I think
Um,
it yeah, type that up, will you? See if you can stuff in a cookie.
yes,
Well, the
yes.
thing is you end up with a high value, highly effective team, which is what creates that competitive edge, and because of that, you also have talent, all talent, including top talent, that not only doesn't wanna leave, but you become the company that's sought after because everybody wants to work there. And you have the third prong of that is long-term relationships, meaningful, valued relationships with internally and externally. So you value the people internally and the other, your peers as well as your team members, and customers and clients and suppliers and any of the resources, they start to value you and you them. So when you have something like we have going on right now with shortages, things sitting on ships and you can't get the pieces and parts, nobody likes it, but at least you have a different type of conversation come trying to look at what's the solution and how can we help each other get through this.
That's one of the things I found in advertising is when you pitched business, conceptually you'd think it would be the ideas that would be the selling point. But what we often heard was the team chemistry was what they bought. They wanted to be
Absolutely.
part of that team, and they really believed that no matter what happened, whatever the, practical things that happened with a team that gelled like that, they could
Right.
achieve a lot more regardless.
Absolutely. I just got back from, some of you, know and others don't, that, I just had eye surgery, cataract surgery on both eyes, and I was back to see my surgeon today, for some other little minor things, but one of the things I told the surgeon whenever I, sat with him, I said, "I am so appreciative of the amount of detail that all of you hear," because I went from one person to another person, and then with the surgeon, because each person had their role of what they were checking and how they were checking it and the machinery that they were using to look into my eyes and find out what was going on and, get the right lenses to put in and all of that. And they all seemed, not only that, it seemed to me as if I mattered, and they seemed like they mattered to each other too. They were all very respectful of each other and laughing and having a great time and still professional. What a concept, right?
Well, especially as families are redefined, it's almost like you're going to a family. I mean, not that you chose them because they were a family, but they acted like a family in the best Hallmark version. And,
Right.
and so you wanted to be around it, and
Yes.
then, when I think about one of the things I thought was interesting is with your book, of course you're going for the title that no one would ever expect, which is, average is an addiction. Here we have people that are high achievers that always want to be, the best, and that competitiveness can get in the way and be opposite of a competitive edge. And now, you're writing about like going from, mediocre to being, a success. And yet you're also saying in the title that being average is something that you're kind of addicted to. So can you explain sort of the dichotomy of, what that's about, and what we're going to learn from your book?
No. No, I'm kidding.
Excellent.
Excellent. Moving on. Next question. Uh, so, average as an addiction comes from years of studying up to, and I hate to even say the word, but 40 years worth of studying things like quantum physics, neuroscience, brain research, NLP, hypnosis, body language, conscious language, behavioral psychology, sports psychology, you name it. I've studied it. I'll talk angels and spirit guides, or I'll talk synapses and brain science. But the average is an addiction is because we are all human beings who are addicted. We are addicted to our thoughts. I think the number is like 90% of our thoughts that we have today are the same thoughts we're going to have tomorrow. So, what an addiction is that? Um, Leaders who are predictable because they're going to act the same, talk the same, use the same words, have the same emotions as they had the day before. Not a way to grow, not a way to learn, not a way to run a corporation that's always looking to innovate and get better. So the average is an addiction is because we're also chemical beings, meaning that when we have an emotion and it creates electrical charges that go to our brain, it also sends chemicals out to our body to let our body know what we should be, what the feeling is that we're having. It's telling our brain how it should respond and what messages it should be taken to our body. So when we're triggered by something in the past, or something in the past, or something that's happening right now that reminds us of anything in the past, and that could be a smell, a thought, the way, tone of voice, the way somebody's dressed, could be anything. Um, and it triggers those thoughts and those feelings. All of a sudden, that little librarian in our head opens up a book, and here comes flooding out all the thoughts and feelings from the past. And it says, here's the way you should be thinking. I don't care what anybody else says. This is wrong. You know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. And then later you go, oh man, I wish I could take all that back, because it's automatic, it's instantaneous. And because we're into those default patterns, each of us, we get up in the morning, and I'm making this part up, but you get the drift, apply it to your own world. We wake up in the morning, turn the alarm clock off, our phone off if it's ringing or whatever the case, check our phone to see about any new messages, go to the bathroom, maybe wash our face off, pet the dog, start the coffee, go back, grab a shower, come back out, say whatever words we might say to our family, and get ready to drive the same pattern to work if you're driving to work, or you walk the same hallway to your office at home. But it's an addictive pattern. And when you try to change any of that, it starts to kind of eat away at us a little bit, because our mind and our emotional system keeps wanting to go back and, no, you forgot something. No, you forgot something. Go back and do that. Go back and do that. Go back and do that. So it takes that addictive behavior that we all have, making a conscious choice, and then knowing the techniques and the steps in order to shift it. Now, let me make one more comment. Addiction is not bad. The question is, what are we addicted to? You could be addicted to running. You could be addicted to eating really good food, or you could be addicted to, smoking too much, or alcoholism, or eating, or whatever it might be. It's not addiction that's bad. In fact, we can use the addiction aspect of who we are as a human being to create new patterns that we consciously choose and turn on and practice, such as the asking questions and, those type of things we've already talked about, to help us, but we need to be aware of them first. So use our addictive behaviors in our mind and our emotional system for for the good, instead of for the things that are keeping us stagnant, keeping us average, vanilla, not moving forward.
So I admit that I was waiting for the movie, so I have not read the entire book, but one of
I
the
know where
things
you
that
live. I will hunt you down. I will TP your house. It's a
hey,
long
listen,
flight, but I'll get there.
probably everybody will steal the teepee. I think there might be a shortage. Um, the the thing that strikes me as you're saying that is we as humans need routine to feel safe. That's why, kids need that routine, and we are just big kids. So when you're talking about like these patterns, we need some level of patterns to be able to feel psychologically safe. And yet I understand you're talking about being able to push yourself.
But think about this. If we continue to run, I mean, you're right that it does create safety for us, which is part of the problem. Because even as a high achiever, I use the example, you could be, in downtown New York in the highest tower, in the biggest building with the biggest office, with the Benz down in the garage and a $10,000 suit on, and be average among your peers, or be average you to you, because you're capable of so much more. So when we look at the fact that for any of us as human beings, anytime we go into growth, that's scary, because growth means change. We cannot grow unless there is change. So we start to create new patterns, new behaviors. I talked about it. When you get to that chapter in the book, you'll read it. There's a point where I talk about you can jump back, you can jump forward. Most of us are just jumping up and down because it feels safe, it feels secure. When we get to the point that we know we can push ourselves even a little bit to make a change, and then we come back to that word I used earlier, praise. Learn how to praise ourselves in great detail for what we just accomplished, for what we just did with courage, no matter what the outcome was. So let's say I've worked with salespeople that, believe it or not, they're afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody. They will do everything they can do not to have to pick up the phone. And yet, once they pick up the phone, have a conversation, the one thing I teach them is when you hang up the phone, you sit there and praise yourself for the fact you picked up the phone. You do an overview of, so what aspect of this phone call did I do really well? And let's lock that in. There's ways of anchoring that in. And instead of saying, what did I do wrong? Because now the brain will tell you everything you've done wrong. It's just a problem-solving machine that looks for a question to answer. Instead, you ask a question like, what could I do different or better the next time? And then your brain comes up with all those answers. Now you just create a new plan for the next phone call, and you go make the next phone call, because now you're building evidence that I can act with courage, take the risk, maybe not do it perfect. When I first started riding a bike, I didn't do it all that well, kept falling down and getting up. First time I tried to tie my shoes, right over left, left over right. Can somebody just give me a pair of freaking slip-ons? You do what you need to do until you get what you really want. But you
So,
do it in a way that's building evidence. So now you've got a brand new routine of fears coming up. Oh, all right, cool. I'm about to grow. Unless
so it
there's,
really, it's
a
it's
lion in
your,
front of you getting ready to jump at you, then
yeah. So it's like challenging the limitations that you have created for yourself is basically
yes.
what you're talking about.
Yes. And one of the things I always do with clients is we always look at what are the things that trigger you and what are the things that are keeping you from moving forward. And it's really, really interesting what they come up with, because it doesn't have to make sense. It's just
Right.
interesting. And we all
Well,
have
yeah,
them.
makes sense to you, but because we're not you, we don't know what the sense is.
Sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes it's just coming out of the unknown because we're not even aware of it. It's sitting in the subconscious mind from way back in the day. And when we start to become aware of it, and we don't have to go back and examine it and cry all through it and everything else, we just become aware of it. And with that awareness, now we have the opportunity to say, okay, so if that's where I'm getting triggered, or that's what's triggering me into certain thoughts and feelings and body sensations and behaviors, either stopping me from doing something or making me do something, supposedly, like put a fist through a wall or scream and holler or whatever. Um, now you can ask those questions again of yourself. So, how would I like to behave in the future when this comes up? And you plan for those triggered moments, knowing that I got this
And
because you've
so
got it
what
all
you're
mapped out.
and so what you're saying is that we do not need to go into the sweat lodge and call each other animal names in order to figure this out. We can do it by working with you.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I like to howl once in a while. I do a mean wolf howl. But no, you're absolutely you're absolutely right that, um, there's and the reason I'm kinda hesitating here is because I actually
Because
like
you have a sweat lodge in the
well,
backyard?
no, but I actually like the idea of a sweat lodge if it's when it's used right, just like I like meditation and some of the other things that people do when they're done right. Or a vision board. You can create a vision board and it's just a lot of pretty pictures that is meaningless, but hey, good for you. Um, or if you use it knowing how the brain and the emotional system works in order to do some future focusing and then bring it back to today's actions, now I'm all for it, but most people never do any of that right. But yeah, it doesn't take a sweat lodge in order to make change.
Well, I am glad to know that. So,
Or doing a lot of steps. I'm really glad to know that.
all right, so this is a good taste of like what we would experience if we were working with you. Actually, you would be taking us through these types of things and obviously teaching us like, different ways or strategies that we could test out and try in order to understand what our own fake limitations, ones that we've put on ourselves are to keep us average and, so that we can continue to grow. Is there anything else you think we should know about like the secret Deborah
Oh,
before
the
we,
secret, Deborah. Well, if you've seen some of the posts, you've seen me diving with great white sharks, and I don't know if we've got anything up of doing the 600 horsepower race car or any of those things, but those were my ways of pushing myself. Because doing, like, say, the great white shark dive, which my son-in-law and I did together, for 3 days, out in the Isle de Guadalupe. I can remember some of my friends doing the Jaws, doo, 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 music and stuff and going, "Have you seen the movie Jaws?" You know what? And I'd say, I can imagine myself on the airplane, coming back, sitting next to my son-in-law. We're looking at our phones and we're sharing pictures with each other of what a great dive we've just had over the 3 days, what a great experience, which means I'm already through and out the other side of it.
unless your
Uh
daughter arranged the whole trip for both of you, in which case we might want to explore her motivations.
Have you seen the insurance policy? Uh, yeah, her thoughts were, "Oh my god, my mommy and my husband are gonna be in the same place at the same time with sharks." Um, which I can certainly appreciate that. But in seriousness, the bottom line is you've got to push yourself in order to grow. But there's a way of doing it and staging it so that you truly get what you want and you're not just pushing yourself for the sake of pushing yourself, that there's a reason behind it. And that there are steps that can be taken so that you can recognize, acknowledge, and praise yourself all along so that you're building that new default behavior, and then you get to do it again. Because if you go to the final chapters of my book, I talk about the 7 C's of excellence, and there's actually an 8th C, which is a bonus C, which goes into courage, that once you go through all 7 C's, the whole process, now it's back to courage, to have the courage to make another choice and go again.
See, now I've
So,
never thought of a C as a
and
bonus. I was always going for an A as a bonus.
say that again, if you would, please, because Siri came on and knocked you out. So
I was just
leave
going to
a
say,
leave a space for him to
I,
edit.
yeah, I never thought of a C as a bonus. As a honor student, I was always going for the A as the bonus. But I got you,
Well, and
courage.
if you look at the averages in addiction, the C on the book is circled like a C for average in the grading system. So,
Look at that. I really should have
yeah,
done my homework.
I'm
You know,
telling you, this is what you get when you hire, the whatever.
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Was I hired? I didn't hear that
No,
part.
where's the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Check's
Yes.
in the mail. Yeah, it's not
Well,
signed, but it's in the mail.
well, thank you for letting me hijack you. I appreciate it. And what we'll put in the, well, I won't because once I'm out of this, I'm no longer hijacked.
Done.
Deborah and her team will be putting in the show notes ways that you can get in touch with her, ways to get a hold of the book, anything else that they might need in order to learn how to work with you or learn more about the systems that you've created.
Basically, it's just reach out to me. You can go to Deborah@DeborahDubree.com. If you email me, put Leaders on the Edge in the subject line or something I recognize because I delete really fast. Or you can go to my website and there's a page that you can fill out and just say that you'd like to have a call, and I'm happy to do that. And just Amanda, for you, thank you. It's always so much fun playing with you and having these conversations that really matter. And bringing your knowledge and expertise to the table, as well as your humor. I so much appreciate that. And for those listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, um, the information for Amanda is going to be out in the show notes and that as well. So in case you'd like to get a hold of her, you certainly can do that as well. So thank you for being a great host.
My pleasure. It has been an education.
For both of us.
Exactly.